You can spend a lifetime with someone and still miss what's right in front of you. The truth often hides in the places you never think to look. My name is Richard. I'm 60 years old, and if you had asked me just a year ago, I would have told you I had life figured out. I run a small woodworking shop in Portland, Oregon. Nothing glamorous, but it's mine. A place where the smell of fresh cedar hangs in the air, and half-finished projects cover every surface. I met Helen 15 years ago at a neighborhood block party. She was the loudest laugh in the whole street, impossible to ignore. 6 months later, we were inseparable. Marriage followed quickly, not because we were rushing away from something, but because everything else suddenly felt too slow. To our friends, we looked rock solid. Helen had a natural gift for bringing people together. Every dinner felt like an event. Every weekend was either a group hike, a movie night, or a backyard cookout at our place. Her calendar was a rainbow of color-coded plans, little smiley faces and hearts marking family, friends, or fun. I used to tease her that she should just open her own tour company. She'd grin and say, "Somebody has to keep you from hiding in your workshop forever." I didn't mind. I liked being the quiet one. It's easy to let someone else be the voice of the relationship, so you don't have to explain what's really going on inside. Helen was the conductor waving the baton, and I was content to follow the rhythm. If you let someone else conduct your life, don't be surprised when the music doesn't sound familiar anymore. The other constant in my life was my best friend, Charlie. We'd known each other since our college days, back when we were broke, running on instant coffee, and convinced we'd change the world with our ideas. Over the years, we'd survived 100 side projects, 1,000 late-night debates, and at least 3 camping trips that nearly killed us. Helen welcomed him without a hint of jealousy. She even called him my platonic soulmate. Sometimes I suspected she was right. Sundays were our day. Every week, Helen and I snapped photos. Breakfast at the corner diner, long walks by the river, impromptu backyard barbecues with Charlie and whoever else dropped by. I saved every picture in an album on my phone called Family Sundays. I updated it religiously and often scrolled through it late at night, the way you touch an old scar just to check if it's still there. I thought that album told the whole story. Didn't. Photographs are honest about moments, but they never speak of what happens in between. The first sign that something was off was small. Charlie canceled poker night. He texted an hour before, saying work had sent him out of town last minute. No big deal. Life happens. A week later, Helen mentioned a girls' weekend at a place called Evergreen Valley Couples Retreat. She'd been talking about it ever since a friend came back raving about the spa and the transformational therapy sessions. "We could use a little adventure," she told me, squeezing my hand. "But I'll check it out first with Janet, see if it's worth our time. You can stay home, catch up on your projects." I smiled and agreed. Helen was always the more social one, the spark in our marriage. If she wanted to lead, I let her. Besides, the shop was busy, and a weekend alone didn't sound too bad. The day before she left, I carried her suitcase downstairs and helped double-check her list. She was rushing, phone buzzing every few seconds, her laugh echoing through the hallway. I stopped her for a quick photo, just for the album. She rolled her eyes, but smiled. "Say goodbye to your hermit," she teased. "Don't burn the house down while I'm gone." If a home feels empty when one person leaves, maybe it was never as full as you thought. That night, as I plugged in her phone to charge, I noticed a new icon, a note in our shared cloud folder. I'd never snooped before, but something about it caught my eye. The title read, "Evergreen Valley, Activities for Couples." Guilt and curiosity tangled in my chest. I opened it. Inside was a neat list: couples yoga, forest picnic, stargazing for 2. Each activity ended with Mr. and Mrs. Coleman. I froze. That wasn't our last name. Maybe Janet's? But the feeling didn't fade. When your instincts whisper, Listen before they have to scream. I checked the booking confirmation in Helen's email, sent to both her and Janet. Only the reservation wasn't under either of their names. Instead, the hotel had it listed as Charles P. Plus partner for the Forest Nest Suite. Same dates. Same suite Helen was supposed to be heading to. My stomach dropped. I scrolled back through our shared expenses. The deposit for the retreat wasn't on our card, it was on another one. Charlie's. For digits I knew by heart from years of birthday dinners, split road trips, and late-night takeout runs. The rational part of my brain tried to argue. Maybe Charlie was just helping her out? Maybe it was some strange coincidence? But deep down, I already recognized the pattern I didn't want to see. I spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, wide awake. Every memory from the last 6 months replayed itself, but with a darker, uglier filter, the sudden business trips. The way Helen's phone was always flipped face down, the nights she came home glowing but somehow distant. Trust is a house of cards, built on countless tiny gestures. The absence of evidence isn't proof of innocence. But when you spot one card out of place, the whole structure begins to shake. By sunrise, I knew I needed the truth, even if it broke me. It's a strange thing bracing yourself for betrayal. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, where someone gets caught in the act and everything explodes. No, it's quieter than that. Slower. Like gathering evidence against the people who once made up the safest corners of your life. I tried to make breakfast the way I always did on Saturdays. Coffee grinding, eggs sizzling in the pan, sunlight crawling across the counter, but the kitchen felt like a stage set. I was an actor in a play I didn't audition for. I replayed conversations with Helen. The night she came home late, claiming she and Janet had been caught in a rainstorm, but her coat was bone dry. The extra long shower after. Or Charlie's nervous chuckle the last time the three of us had dinner together, when Helen mentioned wanting a little more adventure. Were those moments always suspicious, or had my mind twisted them after the fact? Memory is a funhouse mirror. You never know what's real until you stop wishing it were different. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed more than doubts. I needed proof. Because if I confronted Helen or Charlie without it, I knew they'd talk circles around me until I questioned my own sanity. So first, I called Evergreen Valley. Oddly, my voice came out calm. Hi, I'd like to send flowers to my friends, the Colemans. They're checking into the Forest Nest Suite tomorrow. The receptionist's voice was bright and cheerful. Of course, Mr. Coleman and Mrs. Coleman will be arriving tomorrow evening. What message would you like on the card? My hands shook as I ended the call. I took screenshots of everything, the note labeled Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, the retreat deposit charged to Charlie's card, the email confirmation showing the Forest Nest Suite. I stored it all in a private folder and sent a copy to myself. Part of me still hoped I'd wake up and find it wasn't real. Next, I texted an old buddy from college who now worked as a private investigator. I explained just enough. Can you check if Helen Morris and Charles Peterson booked overlapping flights in the last year? They've both claimed work travel more often than usual. 2 hours later, his reply lit up my screen. 6 matching tickets. Same dates. Same destinations. 3 times they both claimed business trips that week. I looked down at my wedding band, remembering the day I slid it onto Helen's finger 12 years earlier. I'd written my own vows. I promised her I'd be steady, honest, and faithful. Now I couldn't help wondering, at what point had steady quietly turned into blind? The cruelest part of betrayal isn't the breaking point. It's realizing the collapse began long before you even noticed. I sat in my workshop for hours, tools scattered on the bench, watching the traffic roll by through the dusty window. I answered a few work emails, my hands trembling so badly I had to retype every other word. A part of me wanted to drive straight up to the retreat that night, kick down the door, demand answers. But I'd lived long enough to know, when you end something as heavy as a marriage and a lifelong friendship, you want to be able to look in the mirror afterward and say you did it right. so I booked a room at Evergreen Valley under my own name. I called ahead, asked the manager to check me in quietly. No fuss. She agreed instantly, like she could hear in my voice that I didn't want an audience. Before leaving, I moved part of our joint savings into escrow. Nothing dramatic, just enough to keep things clean if lawyers had to get involved. I even emailed our insurance agent, flagged possible misuse of marital assets, and attached every receipt I had. Then I packed a small bag, slipped a note into my pocket. No outbursts, no drama, no regrets. That night, I scrolled through the Family Sundays album one more time. There was Charlie, flashing that lopsided grin at a cookout. Helen laughing in the sunlight. Me holding up a pair of burnt hot dogs like trophies. I stared at those faces, trying to match them with the people I now suspected of betraying me. Betrayal is a storm, but before it hits, the air goes too still. It's the silence before the truth that cuts the deepest. By morning, I was on the road to the mountains, rehearsing words in my head. What I'd say if I was wrong, and what I'd do if I wasn't. Evergreen Valley looked exactly like its website promised. Too polished, too calm. Every pinecone perfectly placed. Every fountain staged for serenity. I parked in the lower lot, wiped my palms on my jeans, tried to slow my breathing. The wind in the pines sounded like whispers, or maybe it was just my nerves. Inside, the lobby buzzed with couples checking in, their laughter echoing off stone walls. I spotted Helen first, hair pulled back, wearing the scarf I'd given her last Christmas. Beside her stood Charlie, shoulders hunched, trying to fold himself into the wallpaper. I kept to the background until they reached the desk. When Helen handed over her ID and signed the register as Mrs. Peterson, I stepped forward. My heart thundered in my throat, but my voice was steady. I'd like to check in as well. Name's Richard Morris. My room should be ready. Helen spun around, her face draining of color. For a moment, she said nothing, just stared, mouth half open, like she'd seen a ghost. Charlie stiffened, forcing a smile that looked more like pain. Rich man, I didn't expect to see you here. The manager glanced nervously between us, caught between courtesy and chaos. Is everything all right? I smiled thinly. I'm just here to enjoy the mountains. No drama. But then I turned to Helen. Though I did notice you checked in as Mrs. Peterson, trying out a new last name. Her cheeks flushed, a tear sliding down before she could stop it. Richard, please. Let's go somewhere private and talk. No need, I said calmly. We can keep it simple. Like the note said, Mr. and Mrs. Coleman? Or was it Mr. and Mrs. Peterson this time? Charlie shifted uneasily. It's not what you think. Helen she just needed someone to talk to. That's all. This place is about healing, man. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I pulled out my phone and laid it on the counter. Screenshots of the flight bookings, the synced note, the hotel reservation under his name. It's not just about this weekend. It's about every trip before this one. Isn't it? The manager, sensing the storm, spoke softly. We can cancel the suite and issue a full refund if that's what you want. It's our policy. Charlie's hand shook as he scribbled a signature on the void slip. Helen stared down at the floor, unable to look me in the eye, and I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just tired, bone tired. You can love someone and still walk away. Sometimes loving yourself means you're the one who finally leaves. Back in my car, I sat for a long moment, breathing in the mountain air. The ache in my chest was still there, but the crushing weight was gone. I had done what I came to do. I'd made the truth undeniable. I drove home through the late afternoon light, mountains shrinking in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed without pause. Helen left long, winding voicemails. Apologies, explanations, promises that it wasn't real. Charlie's texts were shorter, desperate, full of regret. I didn't answer either of them. Sometimes dignity is just refusing to beg for what was already yours. For the next week, my workshop became my lifeboat. I buried myself in the smell of sawdust and varnish, focusing on what I could control. Clean cuts, simple lines, projects that always came out the way I planned. Friends began calling, some out of sympathy, others just hungry for details. My sister showed up with a casserole, pretending not to pry. Even Charlie's wife, Melissa, reached out after finding her own receipts. Her voice was colder than I'd ever heard. Thank you for telling the truth. I deserved to know. That night, I poured a drink and sat on my porch, watching the Portland skyline flicker. It struck me how fast a life can collapse. If you build your world on trust, don't be surprised when one crack brings down the whole house. October in Oregon is unpredictable. Bright gold leaves in the morning, gray rain by afternoon. I woke each day to a quieter house, the corners where Helen's shoes once sat now empty, her laughter gone. But the silence didn't accuse me. In time, it became an ally. The legal aftermath came fast. Helen's lawyer tried to play hardball, but every document, the synced notes, the canceled deposit, the flight receipts, made the misuse of assets impossible to deny. The prenup handled the rest. My attorney was brisk, almost detached. You did everything by the book, Richard. Let's keep it that way. Within weeks, our joint accounts froze, the insurance claim was processed, and my workshop was declared mine alone. Helen walked away with her savings and little else. I signed the last papers and felt an odd relief, like exhaling after years of shallow breaths. Charlie disappeared completely. No calls, no texts, no explanations that could possibly matter anymore. I heard from a mutual friend that he'd moved back in with his parents while his own divorce unraveled. Trust, I realized, is a bridge. Once burned, it rarely gets rebuilt. It takes years to lay the foundation of trust, and only a single careless spark to turn it all to ash. Word spread through our circle. Some friends backed off, refusing to take sides. Others knocked on my door with six-packs and dumb jokes, filling the silence with loyalty I hadn't expected. Melissa sent me a short thank you note, her lawyer already drawing up her divorce papers. I wished her peace and meant it. Surprisingly, my business thrived. Clients loved the new name, Honest Bridges. The story traveled, no names mentioned, but everyone seemed to know. Companies began inviting me to lead workshops on trust, transparency, rebuilding after fractures. I never told my own story, but people saw it in my eyes. Each week, I started a new photo album, sunsets, old friends, sketches of bridges I'd never build outside of paper. It was my quiet way of moving forward. If you want to know what matters most, look at what you photograph when no one's watching. Months passed. Helen moved out of state, chasing a fresh start. We never spoke again. Charlie remained a ghost, his last apology unread in my inbox, a file I would never open. Sometimes I wondered if closure really exists, or if it's just the word we give to the first morning we wake up without anger. Sure, I still missed pieces of the old life now and then. Holiday dinners, movie nights, the comfort of believing everything was exactly as it seemed. But those moments passed quickly. The truth is, grief softens, trust regrows, and one day you find yourself thankful for the lesson, even if you hated how it was taught. A year later, I stood at the front of a conference room, leading strangers through a workshop on honesty. Someone asked if I ever regretted leaving things unsaid. I paused, then answered, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is close a door and never open it again. That's my story, the one I never thought I'd tell. It isn't about revenge or evening the score. It's about choosing yourself and building something new when the old bridge is gone. Trust is heavy, but carrying a lie? That's so much worse.